You know, when I first started growing Adenium, I had no idea how tricky watering could be. I thought, hey, it's a plant, how hard can it be? But man, I quickly learned that Adenium is not your average houseplant. Did you know that over 70% of Adenium owners accidentally overwater their plants within the first year? Crazy, right? This plant is a desert survivor, so too much water can actually kill it. So, if you've got an Adenium or you're thinking of getting one, trust me, you'll want to stick around. In this video, I'm going to share everything I've learned about how often to water Adenium, and by the end, you'll feel like a pro at keeping your desert rose happy and thriving. Let's dive in. So, first off, Adenium's natural habitat is pretty dry. We're talking about places like Africa and the Middle East, where it hardly rains. That's why the plant has this thick, swollen trunk called a caudex. It's like its water storage tank. Because of this, Adenium is used to going without water for long periods. It's really good at surviving droughts, which is why overwatering is one of the biggest mistakes people make with this plant. When it comes to watering during the growing season, which is spring and summer, that's when things get a little more active for Adenium. The plant is growing new leaves, flowering, and expanding its caudex, so it's definitely thirstier. I usually water mine about once every 7 to 10 days during this time. But here's the trick, always check the soil first. Stick your finger about an inch deep into the soil, and if it feels dry, it's time to water. If it's still a bit damp, wait a few more days. The key is to let the soil dry out between waterings, but not for too long. Oh, and when you do water, don't just give it a little sprinkle. Water it thoroughly until you see water draining out from the bottom of the pot. That way, you're making sure the roots get a good soak. Plus, it helps flush out any salts that might be building up in the soil. Now, here's where things change. When Adenium goes into dormancy, usually in the colder months like late fall through early spring, the plant slows down and sometimes it even loses some leaves. During this period, you'll want to cut back on watering a lot. I usually water mine about once every 3 to 4 weeks during dormancy, and honestly, that's more than enough. The soil needs to be almost completely dry before you give it any more water. Overwatering during dormancy can be really bad, leading to root rot. If you start noticing yellow or soft leaves, it's a sign you might be overdoing it. Oh, and I can't stress enough how important the right soil and good drainage are. Adenium needs well-draining soil, think cactus or succulent mix. You can even mix in some sand or perlite to help with that. And always use a pot with drainage holes. I love using terracotta pots from mine because they're breathable and help the soil dry out faster. But you know, watering frequency isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It really depends on where you live. If you're somewhere hot and dry, like Arizona or Texas, you might need to water more often, especially if your Adenium is outdoors. If you're in a more humid place, like the Pacific Northwest, you'll probably water less often. And indoor plants generally need less water than outdoor ones since they don't dry out as fast. You'll also want to adjust based on the size of your Adenium. A larger plant with a well-developed caudex can store more water, so it won't need watering as often as a smaller, younger one. One last thing, keep an eye out for signs of overwatering or underwatering. If the leaves start turning yellow or the caudex feels mushy, you're probably overwatering. On the flip side, if the leaves start wilting or the caudex looks shriveled, that's a sign it needs more water. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Once you get the hang of it, watering Adenium is pretty straightforward. The plant's pretty forgiving as long as you don't drown it. And when you get that watering schedule right, it'll reward you with some amazing blooms. Let me know if you end up getting one, or if you already have one, how's it going for you? Would love to hear your experience.